Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Adam, Lady Chow Fung, and Kenny for another episode of Wuxia Weekend. And today we're going to be talking about a film called Have Sword Will Travel. This is a 1969 Chang Cheh film. It stars David Chang, Ti Lung, Ching Li, and Ku Feng. And it's about an escort company that's going to be ambushed by a bunch of bandits, and the leader of the escort company is a sort of ailing swords master. He has this tremendous sword, but his hands are sort of shaky, and it looks like he's too ill to properly protect the company. And so there's that's sort of the core plot, but there's also a love triangle in the mix, and it's kind of an odd film. It's an early Chang Cheh movie, so it feels a little bit like some of the more classic films that he's done, like The Assassin or The One-Armed Swordsman. But I thought that the structure of this one was a little bit unusual. So, I don't know. First, I want to get people's opinions on the movie, but then I kind of want to talk about the flow of the film and how it's a little different from some of the other movies that we've reviewed.
Yeah, and I started the movie with a bit of a mixed feelings about it because I kind of felt that it was very slow to start. It took a long time to sort of ramp up to the climax, but when the big fight happens at the end, I felt that it thoroughly paid off in a sense that the build up was worth it. But the first hour and a bit of the movie was for me a bit of a slog to get through.
I agree. I like the movie, but it is a slower pace than what we usually see from the Iron Triangle. Things don't get started right away. There's a lot of character building, a lot of kind of not really suspense building, but there's a little tension building, and it does come to a wonderful climax. And I feel like at the end of the movie, you end up with what you wanted: good entertainment, good story, a good film, and for me, I was emotionally satisfied.
Yeah, the bringing up The Assassin, I mean, that's a little slower pace too. That's definitely a good comparison. Although I'd say this probably starts slower than The Assassin starts, at least for me. Because it took me a little while to get into it. It wasn't that it was bad or anything. It just took a little while to get going. But I think ultimately it does pay off. I think the time it spends during the first hour probably helps make the climax work better. And because by the second half of the movie is great. I around the whole by the time you get to the whole horse selling thing, I was invested in the movie by that point, and I feel like everything from that point on, I was really into the movie, and it only gets better from that point on.
Yeah, and I think I had a similar reaction, actually. I was kind of like having a lot of trouble getting into it initially. It was very slow. Part of that too was I just wasn't necessarily in the mood for a movie when I watched it. This was my first time seeing it, and sometimes that'll have a big impact. So I was sitting there trying to sort of give the movie a shot. And what I will say is everything they were doing, they seemed to be doing right. So I felt that it was sort of me punishing the movie for being too slow. Like that opening sequence with the silhouettes was great. I thought that was a really fabulous opening sequence. And as I watched the movie, I was paying close attention to every shot, and the shots were all beautiful. And one of the things I feel about Chang Cheh is his movies get more exciting as time goes on, but they get less beautiful as time goes on. Like some of his early films, the way that he shoots them is amazing, and this has that look to it. But it is slow. It's almost like a 1950s style pacing. Like you really kind of have to sit here and like watch the characters unfold themselves slowly. But like everybody said, it does pay off at the end. So it's sort of a double-edged sword. It's like, on the one hand, it is slow. I'm not going to lie to people about that. The opening part of the movie takes a good deal of effort, I think, to really invest yourself in. But if you do, when they get to that final battle, all the stuff that they laid the groundwork for does pay off in the final fight sequence. There's especially the stuff involving the love triangle. But it all does kind of, it is kind of built on all that stuff that they lay down very slowly and taking their sweet time at the beginning of the movie.
You mentioned the title sequence, the silhouettes and stuff too, and I think that almost works against it because this really exciting kind of artistic title sequence. You're like, wow, this is going to be really exciting, then it kind of has that slow build at the beginning. It's very different than the title sequence led me to believe it would be. So it's kind of almost a mismatched credit sequence.
Yeah, I mean, Chang Cheh is really good at the sort of opening title sequences, and that one really grabbed me. That one really worked well for me. But in general, I thought the filmmaking in it was really, especially with like the stuff with the slow motion. He was really, he's known for that, but he was using it very effectively, I thought, in this movie.
Yeah, I thought that too. That was one of my comments that I was going to make, was the slow motion really brought out the lightness techniques of the characters for me. It made you actually look at it and see how a kind of like delicate balance there is between if you had just shot it normally and using the slow motion.
I also noticed, I think that he was having them behave a little differently for the shots that he was shooting in slow motion. Like, it really kind of looked like the actors were flailing a little bit more to give the slow motion more of an effect. Do you know what I mean? And in the shots where it wasn't slow motion, their actions looked a little bit tighter to me. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And like you said, the lightness thing, I thought that this was in terms of wuxia, this is clearly a wuxia film. This is not a kung fu movie. And it's a film that you know it from the beginning because of the rampant use of lightness technique throughout the movie, and the sort of array of characters with all kinds of different weapons and all that stuff. It just had all the sort of features of like a really sort of classic wuxia film. But I quite like, and again, there I feel like there are a lot of movies in this period where you see that lightness kung fu being used in this way, but it was very sort of woven into the texture of the movie the way that they did it. Like there's a lot of slow motion lightness kung fu sequences of people leaping through trees, and it's that early lightness kung fu with the trampolines rather than sort of the extensive use of wire work and stuff.
So, I think there was a little bit of wire work in some parts, but and I also wanted to mention that nice little jingle they had whenever anyone was doing any lightness kung fu. I don't know. I'm sure this was present in other movies as well, but it just particularly stood out to me in this one whenever there was any, because there was like you just hear this like strange little unique jingle that comes up every time any slow motion stuff happens. It's like, oh, that's
it kind of reminded me of, like, you know how the $6 Million Man.
Yep.
That TV show, whenever he was doing anything bionic, it would have that certain sound.
Well, I just want to clarify, Kenny, the sound that you're talking about, was it that harmony on the strings, or was it like...
I think so.
I'm sorry?
I think so. I don't remember what it sounds like now. I just remember definitely every time someone was jumping around, there was like either it was a jingle or a strum or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's like a chord or a harmony on some kind of stringed instrument, because like it sounds to me like the same sound from One-Armed Swordsman, right? Like there was I remember them throwing in this harmony like that, and I don't know, we'd have to go back and check, but either way, I agree with you. I thought it was an interesting aspect to it. I also thought that I don't know. Do we want to talk about the final sequence? Do we want to get into that yet, or do we want to cover other things? Because the final sequence was the one that I found the most impressive of the whole movie.
Yeah, it was definitely the most impressive. But I guess there's plenty of other stuff in the movie that we could talk about. Like I want to just, I'm curious about the horse and and how they've sort of like. I don't know. I was expecting more to happen with the horse, to be honest. There was the whole selling sequence, but at the end, I was like hoping for some sort of like weird heroic sequence with the horse, or an impressive charging sequence of some sort. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was expecting something with the horse.
I liked the stuff with the horse. I thought, number one, it was part of the world building, and I do think this movie did a good job of building a world where they had the inns and all the locations and all the escort companies and all the, like that tower, and like there were all these locations that were clear. Like I was imagining this vast place that they inhabited, and I thought that the horse scene was kind of part of that, but it also was a really important section of the movie for the love triangle. Do you know what I mean? The what was the woman's name? Yoon, Mrs. Yoon, and the Lo
Miss
Yi.
Yoon, yeah.
Yeah, and Lo Yi. It's sort of,
It's what bonded them together. I think for me, it was the horse was his best friend. Then he meets this woman, and she shows him that he loves her, that she loves him by buying the horse back. Not necessarily that she loves him, but that she cares about him. You just don't buy a horse back for anybody.
No, she was in love with him, I think. I think she was.
Oh, yeah, by
much
then,
in love.
I think she was clearly in love with him. That was kind of like her love token to him.
Yeah.
And, he, I think, had fallen in love with her back at the dinner table where the three of them were sitting, and she had said something to him, and he said, "No one's ever told me that before. You're the first." And I think that caused him to fall in love with her. And then the whole triangle comes to bit. But I think the horse was really important to the relationship. Yeah.
That cemented it. But yeah, I think, I honestly, I thought a little, in the back of my mind, I had kind of Guo Jing and Red Pony from Legend of Condor Heroes in my head. The way he would talk to the horse and everything. I mean, he wasn't like Guo Jing in a lot of ways. He was a lot sharper a character than Guo Jing. But the way that, I mean, it like I said, everything plays out differently. But the way, Red Pony plays a role with him giving her away, and that's like a part where Huang Rong really falls in love with him. I kind of had that whole, there was kind of a similarity there to me, which maybe I'm reading too much into, but I saw something.
Well, he had a relationship with the horse that felt like it was important, and that's why it was somewhat moving when he sold the horse, I think. And
I like too that they never quite got into his backstory. It's like, okay, he's this guy who is poor, but he clearly had money at some point. And I kind of like that they never ever cleared that up for us in any way. It just was this thing about him that was a mystery.
Now, what did you guys think about the love triangle? Because I thought that this felt like to me, it felt like a very different love triangle than I've seen in a lot of these movies. Like it was, I mean, clearly love triangles are a trope and they're common. But something about the way this one was presented to us, maybe the order in which all of the characters were introduced, felt like it was out of the usual order, and that the people that I would normally identify with, I was not identifying with, and so I sort of saw this as like like it was an intrusion into the existing couple that we saw at the start of the film, because it opens up and we see Ti Lung and Ching Li, and they're clearly, they're going to get married or whatever, and he has to like throw the dart at her flower, and he does it as all these bandits are attacking them. So it's like a really charming scene where he's all casual and he's fending off bandits, but he's also talking with his lady love, and it just feels like, okay, this is like the couple in the movie. And then when the David Chang character shows up, she instantly falls in love with, like, it's just like boom, she does like a 180, and she's suddenly in love with the David Chang character. And you kind of sympathize with Ti Lung's jealousy. Do you know what I mean? No? Okay.
Early on,
at all.
Early on, I sympathized with him, but he threw my sympathy away fairly quickly.
Now, what did he do to throw it away?
It was just his constant suspicion. I mean, he was, by the time.
But it was well grounded. It was like she was in love with the other guy, right?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, just the way he was making it suspicion about the intentions.
Of the David Chang character.
The way he was, it's like, clearly you're jealous for love reasons, but you're trying to turn this into making him look like he's in league with bandits.
I see. Okay.
That was what it spoiled for me. If he'd been more upfront about, being upfront about jealousy is always a complicated thing. But I don't know.
I didn't. Go ahead.
No, I want to hear Dion's opinion on this, because she reacted first when I said that.
I'm happy to cede the floor here.
I didn't like Ti Lung's character from the beginning. I don't know, something about him from the onset of the movie just made me think arrogance.
Oh, he was definitely arrogant. He was definitely arrogant.
That's why I had no sympathy for him. It's not like he treated her really bad from the onset, but it was just, and I know his arrogance is supposed to come through, but it just, from the moment I saw him, I don't know if it's the way that he was dressed or his makeup or just his posturing or whatever. But he was arrogant from the moment he stepped on the screen, in my opinion. And that didn't give me any sympathy. And I think it took a while for her to fall in love with him. I think she started to like him when they were holding the sword after that one battle, but then she quickly fell in love with him. I think at the very beginning, it was just a kind of admiration of someone who had tremendous skill that surpassed her aunts in the hidden weapon kind of category. And then after that battle that they had, and he saved her, and they held on to the sword too long, then that's when it all changed.
I felt like she was falling in love with him when he went, like, by the time he shows up at the escort company and sits down with them at the table, the way she's looking at him and the way that she's behaving around him felt like she was definitely moving away from being interested in Ti Lung and being more interested in him.
You could see that the admiration was building by then, but I think that she totally fell off that ledge when they held the sword too long.
Yeah, I would agree. That seemed like it was like that was sort of in there because they were trying to be polite about things. Do you know what I mean? And so yeah, I agree with you about that. But I think that that dinner scene really had a big impact. I thought that Ching Li did a really good job of making us believe that she was falling in love with this guy. And I thought they had chemistry, even though they were kind of just seated at the table and they weren't really like engaged in any serious way. Do you know what I mean?
I think she had more chemistry with David Chang's character than Ti Lung's character.
Yeah, I would agree with that. With that. But I still was resentful towards David Chang early on. Like I felt like he was an intrusion, and it took most of the movie for him to win me over. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
and then he did.
See, I've got a slight so you mentioned the beginning scene where they're lying around talking about talking about throwing the darts and the flowers and all that, right?
Yeah.
I thought but when that first came up, I was actually a generic flirting scene or whatever. But as time went on through the movie and seeing more about how Ti Lung's character was acting, I kind of felt like Miss Yun at that point, referring back to that scene, was actually just like trying to get out of like proposing the marriage. Like she was going to try and set up an impossible task for him to do, or a very difficult task. Like she wasn't going to reject him outright because she obviously cares for him, but just maybe not in the way that he was hoping for. And it's one of those things where I think back in that time period, I guess is the whole sort of you can't see anything better, so you may as well settle for the best that you can get, right? And he was handsome, and I kind of agree with Dion as well. Like even from the get-go, Dion's character was arrogant, of course, but he also gave off the air of like a false gentleman. Like the way like she said like, "Oh, don't move until I tell you to," and he like peeks out of under the cloth as well. Like he's got the he's not like a bad guy or anything, but you can just tell like he's not as upright as he might appear at first, and that's sort of like planted the seed in my mind of like, oh, he's not that great after all, and I kind of thought it was perfectly understandable that when someone charming, skillful, and like completely upright, which is like the sort of contrasting against Ti Lung's character shows up, then I can see why she would fall for him.
Well, clearly I've been outvoted in this one. So what I want to ask people is how did you guys feel about the outcome of it then? Because obviously she doesn't. Spoilers for people who haven't seen the movie, and it is on Amazon Prime, so people should go and watch it if they have Prime. But we have that great sort of final battle sequence, and then at the end of it, David Chang is dying, and it's kind of like it's one of these sort of classic, really macho Chang Cheh things where he doesn't want the woman to see him die or whatever, so he's trying to walk off like he's not dying. And it's really not working. Like it was an interesting sequence because it almost veers into comedy because it becomes so difficult for him to keep up the charade of it. But how did you guys feel about, I don't know, her ending up with Ti Lung basically, and having this really awkward final moment with the David Chang character.
I was disappointed that she didn't end up with him, but I kind of understand. He basically sacrificed himself so that she could be not really happy, but better off, because with him, he was poor and he never knew where his next job was going to come from or where he was going to have money. And he was thinking that at least with T. Lung's character, she would be more stable and more steady. And, their families, I guess, expected them to get married because he was the disciple of her aunt and they were so close that, it would be better for her to end up together with T. Lung instead of being with him and always having some kind of cloud of suspicion of being a bandit over top of them. And it just made it easier for him to sacrifice himself. And it proves that he was the better man in the end than T. Lung's character, because he was able to do that for her.
Yeah, and he did do it because he didn't realize that they were going to be getting married until the head of the escort company told him in that moment. And then he had a premonition, right? He has a vision of himself dying, which was real. I mean, this is kind of classic Chang Cheh, but just the way he did it, I thought was really effective. I didn't realize it's a premonition at first. I glanced at the time left in the movie. I'm like, wait, there's 20 minutes. Why that's going to happen for 20 minutes after he dies here? Oh, okay then. But the premonition was different enough that it, you weren't 100% sure if it was going to. So, go ahead.
Yeah, the difference for the premonition, which also ties into my feelings about the ending, is the premonition, it's just him going off and dying heroically. But I mean, in reality, he actually interacts with T. Lung's character, and there's some kind of understanding between them. And I mean, I feel like T. Lung's character learns something by the end. I mean, it's like maybe he wasn't going to be as big a jerk about things. It's like, so it feels like he kind of. Obviously we don't see anything beyond the final scene of the movie, but there seemed to be some difference in the character by the end than the jerk he'd been, about an hour earlier in the movie. So, obviously it's a tragic ending too. It's meant to be a tragedy. So it's like, do I feel good about how it ended? No, I don't, but you weren't really supposed to.
How would you rate it as a tragedy then? Because I mean that's definitely what this is. It's a tragic ending, and it's in the style of Golden Swallow or The Assassin, where the lead character is really really put through it at the end.
Yeah, it's a good tragedy. I mean, it's very inevitable too. I think a lot of good tragedies, like by the midpoint of this movie, I was pretty sure how this was going to end, and it ended pretty much the way I expected. But the fact that I was still really interested through watching this ending that was exactly what I predicted was going to happen says something. That means it worked really well.
And you know what it reminded me of? Actually, the movie that it reminded me of came out later, so that movie would have reminded me of this one, I suppose, had I seen them in the right order. But Lady Hermit. It was very similar in that it had a tower at the end, like a tower structure at the end, and the love triangle is sort of resolved in a. Granted, Cheng Pei-Pei's character doesn't die like that, but she sort of sacrifices her part of the equation in the love triangle, and lets the two people be together. But I agree with what you were saying about him learning a lesson, because. Again, I identified with that character throughout most of the movie, and that's at the point where I started to see the David Chang character in a different light, where I started to come around to being like, oh, okay, he's not so bad. He's he's a pretty good guy after all. So I think he did if I was in his headspace enough in that moment. But I liked that his death was staggered like that. It wasn't like a neat, clean, heroic death. It was this really lingering. Well, he's kind of fine. No, he's not, and just kind of he kind of limps away, and it wasn't nice and neat. It was messy.
I'm glad that he died in front of her, because I wouldn't want her to wonder what happened to him. And granted, in these movies, they could still live because, that's the kind of movie they are.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that there was a final ending to that. She doesn't have to wonder where he is, and she could live her life cleanly and peacefully with T. Lung if she chose to do that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think sometimes they don't like that mentality doesn't provide a lot of closure sometimes, and she definitely got the closure that I think she deserved. But what did you think?
Because I couldn't help but think like, if he wasn't like so busy staggering away and just lay down and let himself get bandaged up, like he might still be alive.
Maybe.
But,
I don't know. He got that stomach wound looked pretty lethal to me. That was like, it looked like he got stabbed in the small intestine or something. From the bandit leader played by Ku Feng. And he had what, 4 arrows in his chest.
Yeah, he started ripping them out too. I'm like, don't, that's the worst thing you could do right now. Leave the arrow alone. But no, he didn't listen to me.
But I would agree with you, Kenny. He was not doing himself any favors. He wasn't even allowing people to help him either. He said he didn't, he didn't want other, he didn't want to have to rely on other people. So when T. Lung goes over to assist him, he's like, he's really trying to sort of, suck it up as much as he possibly can, probably to his own detriment. But again, this is like a what is it? A hard masculinity movie. The sort of that Chang Cheh thing that he always does. Yeah. So it's very sort of John Wayne or Clint Eastwood in style.
Yeah, early on in this movie, because it does start with Ching Li and T. Lung and everything. It's like it was a lot more romantic based than the two guy thing that you get in a Chang Cheh movie. But it's like by the final scene in the tower, it's like finally it's truly become what Chang Cheh movies will be.
I think he had to progress to that, because his early movies, there often is this love element. Like in Assassin, you have it, and in One Armed Swordsman, you have it. I think it adds a lot to his movies. I think that.
I agree.
I think that it's a good aspect to it. I also like that there's actual female martial heroes in some of these earlier movies. Like this woman, there is sort of a thing where he does rescue her from that pestilence guy, but I think it was Pestilence, at least. Maybe
we got to talk about him.
Yeah, I do want to talk about him. But she's still like, she's a capable hero in her own right. And so, I like it's a little bit more, the setting's a little bit more balanced in that way.
When he heads up to the tower, he's like, he's just like, they're just the followers. Like, I got it. I can clean these guys out, no problem.
So what should we say about Pestilence? What were your thoughts on the Pestilence character?
Why did he have to take out one arm from a sleeve and start fighting?
I didn't get that either. I was very
that was my big thing.
I think that's a samurai thing.
Is it?
Oh, really?
Japan, yeah.
So is he supposed to be a Japanese tropes. Fighter, maybe?
I don't think so, but I think it's one of those things which is pretty cool. In that, you like bare your chest and shoulder, and you like start wielding a weapon. It's pretty manly as far as
visually it worked. Visually, maybe it's sort of like an early Chang Cheh. The costuming that we talk about in the later movies, maybe it's an early example of that, that is more practical.
I just thought that was the weirdest thing. Like, he was lustful towards her, so I thought it was going to turn into like a rape
That's
scene
what I
because
thought.
He was getting ready. I don't know. It was just odd.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was too. I thought when he first did that, I was like, is he just like he's disrobing, and that's like the first step in the process for him. But like it seemed kind of weird. But I want to know why he was called Pestilence. It didn't seem
like disrobing to me, though. I didn't read it that way. Just to give a contrasting opinion, I wasn't sure what he was
Kenny
doing,
didn't read it that way either, so I think that's a fair thing. It's just that, but I had Dion's reaction to it. I thought that
that's a fair opinion. Yeah.
But why was he called Pestilence? Did I miss something?
I don't know.
I don't think.
It's one of those weird martial names that probably doesn't really make much sense.
Because when he wounds the Ching Li character, Mrs. Yoon, later in the movie, I was like, oh, his name is Pestilence. Maybe the wound is going to be infected with something, or is going to be poisoned, and then she's going to die, and that's going to be the thing that resolves the love triangle. But that wasn't the case. So
I thought it was just because he was a slimy person.
that could be it. That could be it. Or he's a pestilence of the martial world. He's just this festering, thing.
It's a nickname. His nickname was put on him rather than what he adopted. Everyone just called him that. Oh,
I think pestilence is just a translation thing.
Yeah.
I think technically, like from what I can tell from the Mandarin, it means his name is more along the lines of person who brings bad omens, bad luck, bad JoJo,
Okay.
bad person who brings bad stuff, and pestilence is probably as close as you can get to that, which is a really good translation actually, but not exact. That's that.
Yeah, because I was thinking of in terms of the Four Horsemen, so that does seem appropriate. But yeah, he was sort of an unusual character, I thought. What about just in terms of we've sort of danced around the final sequence, but like the movie is very long. It's sort of this slow build up, and then like the last 30 or 40 minutes is just one long fight sequence, but it's really well done. What did you guys think of the fighting action in this movie?
It was very brutal, I guess. And it was all very slow and deliberate as well. It wasn't like in some fight sequences you can get 10, 20 years down the line, they tried to cover things up with like fast motions and like flashy flares. But here it was all like everything was very sort of deliberate. They are cutting each other, and it just made it feel very what's the like one meaty, I guess.
Yeah, you can hear the hacking. You can hear the hacking into the meat, and I like it because it's at that point where it's still swashbuckly, but there's also a lot more stylistic stuff going on with like the whirling around and the thing, and you can see it all. And so it's all on the actors to kind of do it. And I really like this period of fight choreography. It's not quite as crazy as it later gets. There's like it's not it doesn't get as intense as some of the later action sequences, but it's got like a really brutal and at times graceful feel to it.
Yeah, it had a real sense of a battle going on too between the two sides. I mean, the followers on one side, the followers on the other, them taking each other out. I mean, it did feel like a battle scene, not just a fight scene exactly.
It doesn't feel like they're just throwing random extras at the heroes. It feels like, okay, there's a line of guys over here. There's a line of guys over here. We have to account for them eventually over the course of this fight. And you can see sort of the movement of the tactical movement of the people. And I agree with you. It's really grounded in something. Again, I think that it's a period where you're like, you can sort of look at the footwork and things like that, and it all kind of pays off. But it's peculiar because it's not what martial arts movies later become. It's sort of an in-between period.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a war movie thing in some of the early ones. Like, is it 7 Amazons or 11 Amazons? I've forgotten the number.
14 Amazons.
14. No, I wasn't even close.
As punishment, Adam, I'm gonna force you to watch the remake of 14 Amazons.
Oh, okay. But that was very much felt like a war movie to me. That was an early movie too. But I think the war movie aspect kind of drains out of these movies as you move into the 70s.
Yeah.
But yeah, this still had that going on, at least in that last sequence.
Yeah, I thought that was when I really liked. Like, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about the movie, but when I got into the final battle sequence, that's when I was like, okay, this has all been worth. It's been worth the investment of time now that I'm getting all this, and now that all these emotional payoffs are happening during the course of the fight, because it does matter if you're going to have a battle that long. Like, how long was that final battle? Do you think it was 30 or was it longer?
I think it was longer.
Like 40 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, like From the start of the fight scene, it was actually about...
There are lulls.
Half
There are
an
a few
hour,
lulls.
Yeah, it was about half an hour, yeah.
Because I was 20 minutes at the point when he has the premonition. Like I said, I looked at the clock at that point, and I'm like, there's 20 minutes left. Because I thought that was really...
And that was after like 10 or 15 minutes of fighting, right?
Yeah,
exactly. So I'm saying that was pretty far in. So 40 minutes is a reasonable estimate.
So if we say 40 minutes, that's a long fight to expect people to be paying attention to. A lot of times people will stop paying attention. I think that all the groundwork that they laid early in the movie is what makes it's sort of like, it's why I think calling the movie a double-edged sword is a good way of describing it, because it is boring initially, but you have to have that boring beginning to have the ending pay off the way it does.
It's not boring, it's just slow paced. You just have to get to know the characters and who they really are in order for that emotional payoff at the end. It's not boring.
Yeah, boring's a little harsh because it was slow, and I think once again, like with you, Brendan, I had to watch this even though I was like, okay, the podcast's coming up in 3 hours. If I don't put this on now, I'm not going to get this done. And I wasn't in a movie watching mood, so it took me longer to get into it. But so I think if I'd been, if I'd gotten around to watching it last night when I was in a more laid back, I'm going to kick back and watch a movie mood, it would have been easier to take. But it was fighting the mood I was in.
Yeah, no, and I'm trying to factor that into my description of the movie, because that is definitely a thing that was going on with me. But I was trying to be complimentary to it. What I was trying to say is, like, even though I was bored at that beginning part, it was essential. You couldn't change it. You couldn't spice it up, because if you did, then the ending wouldn't have the payoff that it had. So I sort of saw it as a necessary ingredient for the total movie that they were making.
And it's not like this either. I mean, it's an hour and 40 minutes or something, so it's like, even saying it's like, well, that the first half is slower. It's not. The first half isn't all that long to get to anyway.
By Wuxia movie standards, I would say it was slow. Like, by the sort of...
I got the length. I'm just saying, to get through the slow portion doesn't require you to engage in a huge amount of time, is my point.
And there are some movies in the 90s that are way slower and longer than this one
ever. We've
so,
watched some of them.
Yeah, so I mean, just by Chang Cheh, action movie standards of the time is what we're going by here. We're not,
this is a slow Chang Cheh movie, which is sorry, what were you saying?
I'm just the older ones that we watched have been slower paced.
That's true.
And I think the later you get into the 70s, he becomes faster paced.
And again, it might have just been because of my mood, but this felt different to me than, say, One-Armed Swordsman or The Assassin, where those ones I was quickly invested in whatever it was slower paced at the beginning, but I just sort of connected to it very quickly. And this one, I just had a harder time connecting to that early material for some reason. But yeah, I mean, what was the movie, like King and the Assassin? Was it? Or The Empress and the Assassin, or something like that? I'll have to look it up. There's a Gong Li movie from the 90s that I remember watching. I think I even have it on DVD still. And every time I watch it, I fall asleep. Like I cannot watch this movie without falling asleep because it's so long. And similar reaction to the 2015 Assassin. I want to pass out by the end of the movie. So it's not that level of slow pace. It's there's no danger of anybody falling asleep. It's just that you got to kind of work your way through that beginning stage of the movie to get to the end.
Yeah, I think to a degree, too, there's kind of a sense of not really understanding what's going on in the first couple scenes. Like when David Chang's character's camping outside the pavilion kind of thing, wants to stay the night. It's like, in retrospect, that's setting up the fact he's not involved with them and that he really is this traveler going around. And so that it was useful having that scene in my head later. But when I was watching that scene, I'm like, well, what's going on here?
But that was one of my favorite early moments in the movie, because when that happened, he did that thing where he cuts the grass, and the action sequences were very surreal, I thought, in those moments. Like there was something about the way he was holding the sword and the way that it didn't necessarily connect to the action he had just performed, but it was very striking. Do you know what I mean? It just, I thought there was some really interesting stuff going on in those.
Yeah, I think the surreal thing, the scene at the beginning with just those bandits showing up while while they're kind of having their little love moment and stuff, and then they're just kind of randomly fighting them. That felt really strange. It's just like the bandits attacking them were incidental to the romantic scene they were having. That was an odd
And the
moment.
murder as well, and just sort of the cold like killing of people, and nobody had any change in facial expression. It was
Yeah.
normal to
they
that
were-
point.
But
They
that's
were all lovey-dovey and still killing.
that's I thought that scene was super cool. That was
It was.
yeah.
But
Like
it was
what I liked
weird.
about that scene is it was basically the opening of any movie where the hero and the heroine are walking together and being all romantic in like a nice scenic location with the added zest of bandits attacking them. But like you said, they keep the facial expressions as if the bandits aren't even there. It's a
Yeah, well, actually, compared to the assassin again, the assassin starts with a scene with the hero and heroine are in this field together having a romantic moment, and it's like I would do that scene again, but it needs a fight going on. That's kind of what I feel like was going through Chang Cheh's head with that.
and he
scene.
still
That was-
and he still gets the dart through the flower too, which is why
Yeah.
I was sold on the love story, because it's like, well, his martial arts are clearly incredible, and so that's like that means that they're like a couple fated for to be together in these movies.
When he did that, I was like, show off.
Well, no. Here's the thing, though. That's the one time in the movie that's like apparently that's the big Yun weapon technique. It's their secret weapon technique, and there is no other time in that movie where it ever works again at any point. Like as at that point, I was keeping track of it. People would always catch it, or it would miss someone.
Yeah.
It's just like, come on, this Yun weapon technique isn't impressing me at the moment.
Was I the only one who wanted to learn more about their master, the lady?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, you weren't. I should say. Not
Okay.
yet.
Yeah, because I thought that we got this really interesting glimpse into this larger martial world that they were part of, and I was so curious about. Because man, she must be incredible with that. Like that dart thing sounds really interesting, and we never got to hear of her. I feel like kind of like you said before, there was a lot of that, and maybe it's good that they didn't paint those details in because it kept you curious. But
yeah, once you know every detail, you're in this kind of closed universe. It's like I always like movies to have a couple of threads that just trail off and just give you a feeling of reality.
And I liked the same with the head of the escort company. We know that he's this great swordsman. He has this sword that's sort of like kept on display, and they're all procedural about it. When like the sword gets taken out, but he's got the shakes, and so you never really get to see the sword get used in a tremendous way. But it's this weapon that's it's like the opposite of Chekhov's gun. It's like the sword is there, and you're expecting it to get used in some significant way by the end of the movie, and it really doesn't pay off. But there was something kind of nice about that, because you still are sort of imagining all the things that this weapon would do, and it's one of the, what is it, the 9-ring saber or whatever.
9-ring saber,
Mhm.
yeah.
Like the moment they showed that, I was like, oh man, I want to see them use this because it's 1969. I want to see some early 9-ring saber, choreography going on, and we didn't get any.
Nope.
But I think it was a good sort of use of restraint on his part. It was better that they didn't. But yeah, so I don't know any other thoughts or feelings about this movie. I think we've had a very robust conversation, so it obviously got a reaction out of people. Before we move on to sort of final analysis, final sort of recommendation thing, any additional thoughts?
Nope. I'm good.
Oh, we never talked about Ku Feng as the villain.
Oh,
I always feel like that's something that we sort of forget to talk about.
Ku Feng or about the villains?
I guess both, really.
Because he often is the villain. So, I mean, I thought this was a decent villain. It's not like my favorite Ku Feng role, but I mean, he was a nice sort of dangerous bad guy, and he kind of had sort of a, I don't know, something about his eyes in this one were a little bit more mesmerizing than normal. There was sort of a Tony Soprano type thing going on with his eyes that I thought worked well.
I liked how professional he was. He was just really no nonsense. He went about his business during the final battle scene. He's kind of conducting the battle. It's just like he's just this like, you know. I mean, I haven't watched Sopranos as we've talked about, which we are going to fix. But I feel like you comparing him to someone in organized crime. Yeah, he's just this organized crime boss doing his thing.
Yeah,
that's what he's doing in this movie. There's no.
He wasn't,
vast evil thing,
and he wasn't like a show off. Like he was smart. Like there was that scene where he and David Chang had the confrontation, and David Chang's like, "Well, the next time you ask me that question, I'm going to kill you," and he let it go. He didn't. Yeah. He walked away.
Okay.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, he was a better martial artist than some of the other characters in the movie for that reason. He was able to kind of not. To sort of not engage in the violence.
And as far as the organized crime angle, his logic too, it's like when he's talking to David Chang, it's like he's like, David Chang's like, you're going to steal his silver, and it's like, it's not his silver, really. I mean, come on, he's just delivering it. That was just, I'm like, that's very organized crime logic there.
But and also, like, think of the bloodshed that could have been averted if they just had let him take it, So.
Yeah, I know. It's just, I was, I don't know why you can't work with me. I'll cut you in. Everyone will walk away a little richer. What's the problem here?
But
I did like how thorough his planning was. I mean, to have like men left to ascend the tower after David Chang and T-Don's character had already gone up was sort of not something you usually see from villains in Wuxia movies. So that's like a next level of planning that really screwed over David Chang in the end. So
I agree with you, and I think that tower was really well done. So you sort of again, it reminded me of Lady Hermit, but also Game of Death as well, the sort of famous tower sequence where he has to go up the different levels and fight the different people. But yeah, I thought that was I thought he was a very strong villain. It just I think he developed so much as an actor after this that some of his later roles are left more of a mark for me. But also this is my first time seeing it, so maybe if I see it again, I'll notice some of the subtleties of the character more. So I don't know, what's everybody's sort of rating and recommendation on the 1 to 5 scale?
Ooh, it's tough because while I enjoyed the movie and thought that the first half was absolutely necessary for the whole movie, it starts off as like a 2 for me, going up to a 4, and do I average that and say it's a 3? But that feels a bit too harsh because it was. I'm in a bit of a dilemma here. So.
That was the number that when I first saw the movie, I was like, I'm going to give it a 3. So I think that's and it was similar reason. It was a very similar reason. But I don't know, Adam and Dion, what do you guys think?
I think it went from a 2, and by the end it had gone up to a 5. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna go with a 4, just because I think the ending of this movie was really, really strong, or strong enough that I walked away from this movie thinking, wow, that was really, really enjoyable. So it was well worth the little effort to get into it for me.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 4. I think it's one of the best Iron Triangles, even though it was an early one. I just loved the way that the movie flowed, even though the beginning was slow, but I liked the development of the characters, and I liked everyone who was in it. The battle scene at the end was amazingly done well, considering it was 1969, and we saw all the movies that came later before that. So I really enjoyed the story. It didn't seem like really typical of a story, something ho-hum, and you see it all the time. It was a different take on it. And I don't know, I'm just going to mention this. For some reason, David Chang's character was kind of a cross between Robin Hood and Peter Pan for me, and I think it was the look that was on the screen, and not so much of his actions. But I don't know. Every time I've watched it 3 times now. It's been the first thought as soon as I see him on the screen, Peter Pan, and then I flip to Robin Hood. But he doesn't do anything that either of those characters do. It's just the look.
I always
try to convince people he isn't a bandit. You go and compare him to a bandit. I think he'd be very, very offended.
I always think of him as James Dean. That's sort of the comparison that always leaps to my mind. And here, to me, he felt like a cross between James Dean and John Wayne. Like that was one of the most macho death scenes that it was a real sort of classic, manly man type death scene, and so it was kind of because he sort of has that James Dean vibe. I thought it was an interesting ending, but yeah, I don't know. I think that the ending of the movie is really strong. I think everybody can agree 100% with that, and I think that most of us agree it's a good movie. And so, I think our if we averaged out our ratings, it's like, what, a 3.5 stars, basically. So
yeah, I'd say too. Another reason I gave it a 4 is I think I'd like the beginning better on a subsequent view, because now I know the characters. I feel like I wouldn't be spending that time getting to know them. I'd be appreciating the character work from the beginning, and I think it would go smoother that time.
No, I agree with you. I feel like I do need to see this movie again to give it, I think I have to give it a more fair hearing, just because I wasn't in the mood, and that usually does sort of knock them down a peg for me. But also the fact that by the end I was, like you, enjoying myself says a lot. So I'd be curious how I'd react to that earlier section of the movie now that I know what's coming down. I might be paying more attention to some of the details. I might be more interested in some of the smaller moments of the movie. So yeah, I don't know. Again, the movie's on Prime. I think people should go check it out if they are curious about it. If our discussion got them interested, there's a lot of these movies on Prime, so I always encourage people to go there. If you want to see Celestial Pictures, Shaw Brothers stuff, it's a good place to go. There's also a lot of other martial arts movies there. So we'll be back on next week with another film. And we also are going to, we also have Patreon, which we encourage people to go and contribute to. There are reward tiers, and so you can go and check those out. And what the Patreon does is it helps us to, every once in a while we have to buy DVDs and mail them to people, or we have to replace a broken mic, or, I don't know. Adam gets a busted kneecap and we have to help him out. It
happens a lot.
He's a degenerate gambler. So it's one of these things. So
my system's coming together. Just give me a little more time.
So your Patreon will help pay for Adam's gambling, issues, and for our mic problems. So. And so, we encourage people to go check out the Patreon page. And also we got Wuxia Workshop coming up. I think the next movie, I know there's going to be an in-between film. I can't remember what the in-between movie is, but I have a fresh Blu-ray of Chinese Ghost Story here, and I'm going to be mailing that out so that we can do the Wuxia Workshop version of it. So we'll be back on next week. And until then, we will talk to you later.
fuck!